Today's episode breaks down the biggest leadership and business moves in the localization world. Lionbridge welcomes a new CEO, Sebastian Bretschneider, while RWS makes a £40 million play for brand protection platform Obviously Group. We also dive into the latest tech benchmarks, including Lilt's Gaia V2 release and the launch of VSL Nova for AI dubbing. Plus, we look at why 40% of localization budgets are remaining flat despite the massive AI boom. Today is May 6, 2026, and this is Locanu.com, localization news you can use. Let's get straight into it. We have the brightest engineering minds pouring billions into scaling these cognitive systems, trying to make them polyglots, and they are essentially just tripping over our sloppy linguistic data. Lilt officially launched their Gaia V2 Lilt benchmark today. They specifically audited how well AI agents perform in languages like Arabic, Hindi, German, and Korean, and they proved that a massive chunk of the AI's failure rate is caused by translation artifacts in the data assets. Here's the interesting part. A translation artifact is not a mistranslation in the traditional sense. It's not a misspelled word. It is an inherent structural flaw in the translated training data that confuses the model's logic. It happens when translators, often working under high-speed constraints, produce a translation that is technically correct on a word-for-word basis, but syntactically unnatural in the target language. Think of a brilliant math student taking a calculus exam. They fail, not because they don't know the math, but because the test was printed in blurry, illegible ink. The student has the logic, but the bad material is blinding them. When an LLM tries to solve a logic puzzle in Korean, but the prompt was translated from English using unnatural sentence structure, the AI wastes its compute power deciphering the weird grammar instead of solving the puzzle. Clean data is now the most valuable commodity on Earth, and the economic pressures surrounding this are getting intense. TransPerfect's 2026 Business Outlook report just dropped today, surveying 96 global enterprise leaders, and the disconnect in the data is wild. 65% of enterprise leaders are already running AI inside their core localization workflows, and 74% consider it a top strategic priority. But at the exact same time, 40% of these organizations expect their localization budgets to remain completely flat for the foreseeable future. How is the C-suite rationalizing that math? They think they just bought an infinite capacity translation machine. They're telling localization leaders to scale exponentially, 5 times the languages, continuous deployment, without another dime for headcount. It's like being asked to cater a wedding banquet for 500 people using the grocery budget of a backyard barbecue. You still need the raw materials and the people to cook. So what breaks first? The traditional service model. We are seeing the exact proof of that in the preliminary 2026 NIMSY 100 ranking. For the first time ever, NIMSY completely changed their methodology to include pure technology firms right alongside traditional LSPs. You now have companies like DeepL and Lilt sitting on the exact same competitive ranking as legacy translation agencies. The boundary between software vendor and service agency has completely dissolved. An enterprise buyer with a flat budget is looking at their spend and asking whether they should buy human project management from an agency or just buy a direct enterprise license from an AI developer and automate the pipeline themselves. Traditional agencies are being forced to sell technology integration and AI governance just to survive, which totally explains why major corporate platforms are completely bypassing the localization handoff. They aren't even bothering to export files anymore. Look at Haas Automation. They just announced they are completely eliminating the traditional localization file transfer process by integrating TransPerfect's Global Link Connector directly into their HubSpot environment. Their global marketing teams are executing multi-channel campaigns in a dozen languages without a single engineer touching a file. And it goes beyond basic embedded localization. Look at the acquisition Optro just finalized today. Optro, formerly Audit Board, bought Midship, an AI-native solution for GRC, governance, risk, and compliance automation. Optro is integrating Midship's AI to automatically generate and localize highly complex compliance narratives across global jurisdictions, natively inside their platform. They are deploying agentic systems. Now, agentic AI is the buzzword of the year. But what is the actual mechanical difference? Think about the automation we had 2 years ago as a highly advanced spell check. It was completely reactive. A human still had to hit approve. An agentic system is proactive. It's like hiring a senior operations manager. You tell it to ensure Q3 financial disclosures comply with German and Japanese regulations. The AI independently drafts the narrative, translates it, interfaces with the foreign regulatory portal, and submits the filing without you ever clicking a button. Sounds like a liability nightmare, right? If that system hallucinates a regulatory clause in Japanese, the company faces millions in fines. This is exactly why the announcement from the Cloud Security Alliance today is the most important piece of infrastructure news we've seen all year. The CSA just released broadened security frameworks explicitly for agentic AI, calling it the Agentic Control Plane. By integrating their STAR framework for AI assurance, they provide a standardized scaffolding. It mathematically guarantees that the AI agent cannot execute a final action if the translated output deviates from the pre-approved corporate terminology glossary. It gives enterprise legal teams the auditable proof they need to let autonomous agents operate. So what happens to the human project manager? They aren't evaporating. The role is aggressively elevating. The person whose job was dragging and dropping XLIF files is obsolete. But to safely run autonomous systems, you need flawlessly structured multilingual data. The project manager is morphing into a data operations architect. This makes sense when you see that the AI data market is projected to hit $21.5 billion by 2031. This is a global supply chain split into 3 layers. Data production, which is the sourcing of subject matter experts doing reinforcement learning from human feedback. Data infrastructure, the annotation platforms and vector databases. And data assets, the proprietary, legally cleared multilingual archives used to train base models. And because of this massive shift, legacy titans are completely tearing up their playbooks. Lionbridge just appointed Sebastian Bretschneider as their new CEO to focus on the intersection of language and AI data services. RWS brought in Bretschneider to lead their Transform business unit for the Americas. But the move that really stops you in your tracks is RWS acquiring a London-based company called Obviously Group for up to £40 million. Obviously Group isn't a translation agency. They are a platform for intellectual property protection. Why buy them? Because we are witnessing the evolution from language service provider to global brand guardian. Instead of just translating marketing copy into Mandarin and sending an invoice, RWS wants to own the entire global lifecycle of a brand. They localize the voice, and then Obviously Group's technology scrapes Asian e-commerce platforms looking for knockoffs. If a counterfeit pops up using a modified localized brand name, the AI detects the trademark infringement and triggers a legal enforcement protocol. This pivot toward deep structural localization is aggressively bleeding into heavy industry and sovereign infrastructure too. South Korea's DTK Co. Ltd. is pushing a 2028 IPO predicated entirely on the localization of semiconductor manufacturing equipment and AI data centers. At the Make It in the Emirates 2026 event, the UAE government launched a 1 billion dirham industrial resilience fund focused strictly on the localization of vital industries and local procurement. This is the rise of sovereign supply chains. A nation must operate its critical sectors, energy grids, water desalination, semiconductor fabs, with total autonomy. If geopolitical conflict blocks a Western tech giant's API, the robotic arms in an Abu Dhabi plant still need to move. You are adapting high-stakes engineering protocols into Arabic or Korean, and if the terminology mapping for a pressure valve is ambiguous, the factory literally explodes. At the exact same time, localization is expanding into hyperhuman, empathy-driven spaces. Vanderbilt Health is rolling out Vivian, a multilingual virtual avatar for clinical patient intake. Metro Credit Union partnered with Traduality to deploy Fire Lingo face-to-face translation tablets across 18 branches. Certify Inc. expanded its PJC bridge test for Japanese proficiency into 15 new countries, and VSL Global launched VSL Nova, specifically engineered to fix lip-sync artifacts and emotional loss in AI video dubbing. When a patient walks into Vanderbilt, Vivian isn't just a text-to-speech engine. The avatar dynamically maps culturally appropriate nonverbal cues. VSL Nova does this visually, literally redrawing a speaker's mouth movements frame by frame so they perfectly align with the translated audio, but the human element remains fiercely guarded. The American Translators Association announced the release of Texas interpreter Minu Batra from ICE custody today, a chilling reminder of the physical jeopardy interpreters navigate. Vlad opened its 2026 Portuguese literary translation grants. Pro.com has a massive 1 million hour human interpreting contract deadline today, and Asha is running a virtual career fair for speech-to-text professionals. Language is the ultimate dual-use asset, fuel for machine intelligence, and a fundamental vessel of cultural identity. To bridge these two realities, we are seeing a massive surge in consensus-based MT. Instead of relying on traditional MTE, that is, machine translation post-editing, where human linguists manually clean up raw machine output, consensus-based MT automates the cross-referencing. The routing software sends the source string simultaneously to GPT-4, Claude, and DeepL, mathematically compares the vector variance between the outputs, and synthetically generates a final consensus translation, dramatically lowering the risk in high-stakes access points. Psychologically, you can feel the exhaustion. The UK's Institute of Translation and Interpreting branded their EX Change 2026 event around the anxiety of the liminal space, that uncomfortable transitional hallway between the old world of manual translation and the new world of seamless AI orchestration. The workflows are half broken and expectations are divorced from reality. Lingoport warned that leaders must aggressively prove their ROI right now. But academic research from the LT LIDAR project maps out the roadmap. Human value is shifting toward oversight and governance. Nobody cares how many words per hour you can translate anymore. You are a commercial pilot. You aren't flapping the wings. You are managing automated systems and taking the yoke when things get turbulent. And you need that pilot because the concept of a static final translation is dead. Slater published an editorial on the infinite final version. We are moving to adaptive dynamic messaging. Localized declared the one-engine MT model officially dead in favor of dynamic routing and moving terminology upstream. Dynamic routing means middleware analyzes incoming text in milliseconds, sending German engineering manuals to a custom DeepL model and Japanese marketing slogans to Claude. Moving terminology upstream means that instead of leaning on an old translation memory, the database that stores previously translated sentences to maintain consistency, the localization manager injects the corporate glossary directly into the prompt's latent space before generation. But Inez Abdelkhalik at Daily News Egypt rightly warned about cultural homogenization. If we rely entirely on Western-trained LLMs to generate these infinite versions, we risk steamrolling local cultures by using an American philosophical structure to frame an Arabic thought. Translation must be cultural diplomacy. Finally, the UX nightmare of all this automation is becoming the primary battleground. DeepL is massively expanding their AWS infrastructure to fix caption churn, that anxiety-inducing flickering where live translation text constantly overwrites itself on Zoom. They know accurate translation with terrible latency is a failed product. And Localized just dropped a brilliant piece on GEO, generative engine optimization. Traditional SEO is dead because users now ask AI assistants instead of searching Google. If your localized product documentation isn't mathematically structured for an LLM to ingest, an AI assistant will literally never cite your brand. You aren't managing search rankings anymore. You are managing direct AI discoverability. The cognitive load of managing all this is skyrocketing, which is why the TRIPS research group at the University of Mons kicked off a biometric eye tracking workshop today. When you perform LQA, language quality assurance, the systematic process of evaluating translation quality, you need to account for cognitive load. We need empirical data to prove to the C-suite that managing automated localization is mentally taxing, high-value engineering work. Before we get into the final takeaways, just a reminder that you can find more practical insights like this at locanuku.com, localization news you can use. To summarize today's massive shifts, the boundary between technology vendors and service providers is completely gone, as seen in the NIMSY 100 shakeup. automation has evolved into proactive, agentic AI that requires strict new security frameworks and flawlessly structured data, turning project managers into data operations architects. Meanwhile, heavy industries are investing billions in sovereign supply chains that require localized technical autonomy, while healthcare and media are leveraging multimodal AI to synthesize empathy. Through it all, the role of the human expert is transitioning away from raw word generation and toward high-level system governance, brand guardianship, and generative engine optimization. And that's your daily dose of localization know-how from locanuku.com. Localization news you can use.